Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive. This time, we're going to be exploring something pretty profound, the concept of shunya.
Junior.
Yeah, and you know, that feeling of emptiness or nothingness
Right.
as a path to spiritual growth and liberation.
Yeah.
And to guide our deep dive today, we're going to be using an Osho lecture. It's called Osho Dien Sutra 07.mp3, if anybody wants to look it up.
Great lecture.
And what I find really interesting about this is we're not dealing with a bunch of dogma and religious, stuff like that. We're going to dive into some practical techniques for experiencing shunya, like in your body, in your thoughts.
In your emotions.
Emotions, yeah.
Yeah.
And to kick things off, we have a fascinating story about Alexander the Great.
Oh, yeah.
And an Indian mystic.
Love this story.
That really brings this whole idea of detachment and inner mastery to life.
It's a great illustration of how this concept was valued even in ancient times.
So picture this. Alexander the Great, at the height of his conquests in India, he decides he wants to bring this Indian mystic back to Greece with him.
Right.
What do you think it was about these mystics that Alexander was so fascinated by?
Well, I think despite all of his worldly power, Alexander was drawn to those who had achieved a level of inner peace and wisdom that he hadn't. He seemed to understand that true mastery lay not in conquering land, but in conquering oneself.
It was as if he sensed there was something more to life.
Exactly.
So Alexander has his soldiers searching all over for the most impressive mystic they could find. And of course, many of these mystics were eager to go back to Greece with Alexander. I mean, who wouldn't want to be in Alexander the Great's good graces?
Right, sure.
But Alexander was seeking genuine mastery, not someone who was, swayed by these worldly desires.
Yeah, he wanted the real deal.
Exactly. He wanted someone who wasn't after fame or fortune. So finally, they found this mystic living a very, very simple life by a river. The soldiers went to him with what they thought was an irresistible offer. They said, "Come back to Greece with Alexander. You'll have everything you could ever want.
Yeah.
Anything.
All the riches.
All the riches, all the, women, whatever."
Yeah.
And that's when the mystic just calmly says, "No one can force a true faker to go anywhere."
It's a great line.
Can you imagine those soldiers' reactions?
So,
like, do you know who you're talking to? This is Alexander the Great.
Right.
But the mystic stood firm, saying, "Go back and tell your Alexander that all his might, all his victories can't conquer someone who has conquered themselves."
Wow, talk about a power move.
Right.
That statement cuts right to the heart of shunya.
Yeah.
This mystic is demonstrating that true liberation comes from detachment. It's about not being controlled by any kind of external forces or desires.
Right.
It's about achieving this inner freedom that no worldly power can touch.
Yeah, and that's where this concept of shunya, especially in relation to the physical body, comes into play.
Right.
It's about letting go of that attachment to our physical form.
Yeah.
So how do we actually start to experience this shunya in our bodies?
Well, Osho explains that much of our suffering stems from this thing called tadatma, which basically means body identification.
Body identification.
We fall into the trap of believing that we are our bodies. We say things like, "I am sick, I am tired, I am in pain," as if these physical sensations define our very being.
Yeah, it's easy to see how that kind of thinking would lead to a lot of suffering because we become so entangled with these physical experiences that we lose sight of the observer, the consciousness that exists beyond the limitations of our bodies.
Exactly, and that's where Osho's technique of mindful observation of bodily sensations comes in. So instead of just saying, "My foot hurts," you become more aware and you acknowledge there is a sensation of pain in my foot and I am noticing it. It seems like a minor change, but that separation between the I and the sensation is really crucial.
So we're not saying that the pain doesn't exist, we're just changing our relationship.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that you are not the pain itself, but the awareness that is experiencing the pain. You're creating a space, a detachment between the experiencing self and the experience.
That's such a helpful way to think about it. It's like separating the movie from the person watching the movie.
Yes.
There's the screen where all the sensations are playing out, and then there's you, the silent observer.
Exactly, yes. And you can apply this to any sensation. Pleasure, hunger, the feeling of your clothes against your skin.
Right.
Just notice the sensations without identifying as the sensation itself.
This is something you can practice all the time, too. As you're walking, eating, even lying down, become aware of your body's actions and sensations without getting lost in them.
Right.
Be the observer.
Be the observer. Osho also recommends a really powerful technique to deepen this experience of detaching from the body, which he calls the nightly death meditation.
Now, this sounds a little intense.
Yeah.
What exactly does that involve?
It involves visualizing your own death. I know that may sound a bit morbid,
Yeah.
but the purpose isn't to dwell on negativity or anything like that.
Correct.
It's to experience the separation of your consciousness from your physical body.
That makes sense. So how do we actually do this meditation?
So you want to find a comfortable position lying down.
Okay.
Close your eyes and just begin to imagine your own death. You know, picture your loved ones gathering around you, maybe the funeral procession, even your cremation. Just allow these images to unfold naturally in your mind.
And while this is happening, what should we be focusing on?
As you imagine your body being gone, notice what remains. There's still an awareness, a presence that's witnessing this entire process.
So even though the body is gone in our minds, there's still a part of us
Yeah.
that's observing everything.
That's the point.
Okay.
To experience that unchanging consciousness, that sense of shunya
Yeah.
that exists beyond the physical realm. And it helps you to realize that you are not limited to your body.
This is definitely making me think differently about my relationship with my body.
Yeah.
So we've talked about shunya in the body, but what about our thoughts?
Yes.
Our minds can be pretty chaotic places sometimes.
Okay.
It's like our minds are constantly churning
Yeah.
with thoughts, worries, plans, judgments.
All that stuff.
It could be exhausting.
Oh, it is. It's exhausting. And that constant mental chatter can cause some real suffering. We get so caught up in these thoughts, believing they define who we are. But Osho offers a different perspective, a way to find shunya even in this mental whirlwind.
I'm all ears. How do we calm this mental storm?
The key is to simply witness your thoughts,
Oh.
to observe them without judgment or attachment. Think of them like clouds passing through the sky.
Okay.
The clouds come and go, but the sky itself remains unchanged.
I like that. It's a really vivid image that helps to see thoughts as temporary and not so solid.
Exactly. Or imagine a flowing river.
Okay.
The thoughts are like the water, constantly moving and changing. But the riverbed, the space that holds the water, remains constant.
So how do we actually put this into practice? Do we try to push thoughts away or stop them from coming up?
Not at all. Resisting thoughts actually gives them more power. Instead, try to just observe them,
Okay.
as if you were watching a movie.
Mm-hmm.
Notice the thoughts arising, flowing, and fading away, but don't get caught up in the storyline.
Mm-hmm.
Don't judge them, analyze them, or try to control them.
That sounds challenging, especially when we're dealing with difficult or repetitive thoughts.
Yeah, it definitely takes practice. Osho shares a story in his lecture about a newly initiated monk who had a rather unsettling experience while he was out begging for food.
Okay.
A woman offered him food, and she seemed to know exactly what he was thinking and craving, even before he spoke.
Oh, wow. It's like she was reading his mind.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the monk was freaked out, ran back to Buddha, and said, "She's reading my mind. I can't go back there."
I can imagine how embarrassing that would be. What did Buddha say?
Well, Buddha, wise as ever, encouraged the monk to go back. He told the monk that this was an opportunity for learning.
Interesting.
So the monk, feeling a bit apprehensive but determined to follow his teacher's advice, returned to the woman.
Okay.
But this time, he went back with a heightened awareness of his thoughts.
So he was paying more attention to his own mental activity. Did that change anything?
That's the interesting part. As the monk became more of an observer of his thoughts, he noticed they started to lose their intensity.
Mm-hmm.
They became less solid, less gripping. And the woman's ability to seemingly read his mind actually diminished.
So by becoming the observer, he actually weakened the power of his thoughts. That reminds me of a quote by Buddha. Be the seer of thoughts, not the thinker.
That's a great connection. It perfectly illustrates the point. The thinker gets caught up in the content of the thoughts, identifying with them, getting swept away. The seer, on the other hand, simply observes those thoughts arising and disappearing without getting entangled in their drama.
It's like recognizing that you are not your thoughts, but the awareness that is experiencing them. Is that what shunya in the realm of thoughts is all about?
Precisely. It's about cultivating that spaciousness in the mind where thoughts can come and go without disturbing your inner peace.
I've definitely experienced that sense of stillness and peace during meditation, even if it's just for a few moments. It feels like stepping back from the constant chatter and connecting with a deeper level of awareness.
That's a perfect example of accessing shunya in the mind. And just as we can learn to detach from our bodies and thoughts, Osho says we can also observe our emotions without being consumed by them.
Oh, emotions. That's a whole other can of worms. They can feel so powerful and overwhelming sometimes.
Absolutely. But even the most intense emotions, like love and hate, are transient.
Yeah.
They arise, they reach a peak, and then they subside. But there's a part of us that remains unchanged, a still point in the midst of the emotional storm.
So we're not trying to become emotionless robots.
Not at all. It's not about suppressing or denying our emotions. It's about recognizing that we are not our emotions, but the awareness that experiences them. Think of it like this. You've probably felt intense joy, deep sadness, and even burning anger in your life.
Definitely.
And yet through it all, wasn't there a part of you that remained aware? A part of you that witnessed those emotions passing without being completely swept away?
It's like there's a calm center within the storm, a place of stillness.
That's shunya in the realm of emotions. It's not about becoming emotionless. It's about creating space to experience those emotions without being defined by them.
So we've covered shunya in the body and thoughts. Are the techniques for experiencing shunya in the emotional realm similar?
Yes, the principles are very much aligned. It's about shifting from identifying as our emotions to recognizing them as passing states, like waves in the vast ocean of our being.
So instead of saying I am angry, it's more like there's a feeling of anger present and I'm noticing it. Does that sound right?
You got it. It's a subtle shift in language, but it makes a huge difference. Instead of getting completely submerged in the emotion, you're creating that separation. Think of a powerful wave crashing on the shore.
Okay.
It's a dramatic display of force, but the vastness of the ocean underneath remains undisturbed.
That's a helpful analogy. So we're like the ocean, not the individual wave. There's a part of us that stays calm and constant even when emotions are swirling around.
Exactly. That's the shunya we're looking to experience in the emotional realm. Osho emphasizes that by tapping into this space of awareness, we can experience even intense emotions without being completely controlled by them.
You know, this makes me think about those times when I've felt completely overwhelmed by stress or anxiety. But then there's a moment of clarity where I realize, okay, this is intense, but it will pass.
That's a perfect example. In that moment of clarity, you're connecting with that observing consciousness, that space of shunya within. You're recognizing the temporary nature of the emotion and tapping into a deeper sense of self that isn't defined by those passing states.
It's almost like realizing you're bigger than whatever emotion you're experiencing.
That's a great way to put it. And when we start to view emotions from this perspective, they lose some of their power to dictate our reactions and behaviors.
Yeah.
We can experience them fully without being completely swept away.
So to bring this all back to our main topic, it seems like experiencing shunya, this emptiness or nothingness, isn't about actually becoming empty. In the sense of having no thoughts or feelings, it's more about becoming aware of the unchanging consciousness within all of that.
Right. That's the essence of it. Osho's teachings point us towards this realization that we are not our body's thoughts or emotions. We are the awareness that experiences all of these things. It's like realizing that the container remains constant even as its contents change.
This deep dive has really been eye-opening. It's given me a lot to think about, especially this idea that there's a deeper self, a shunya within, that's beyond the ever-changing world of sensations, thoughts, and emotions. It makes you wonder, if we're not these temporary, fluctuating things, then what are we?
That's the million-dollar question. And I think it's a question that's worthy of a lifetime of exploration. Perhaps this deep dive has sparked the beginning of your own journey into this fascinating concept of shunya.
I think it has. And for everyone listening, we encourage you to continue this exploration as well. Delve deeper into Osho's teachings, experiment with these techniques, and see what insights you uncover about your own true nature.
Remember, the journey of self-discovery is ongoing. Each step we take towards greater awareness is a step toward greater freedom and liberation.
Until next time, keep diving deep.
Please like, share and subscribe.